Of peace be with you all. I greet you all in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, and I say, welcome to Kingdom Conversation, an MMG podcast, a platform that aims to equip men to live a life that is faith and that is purpose. And I'm your host. My name is Purupara Maziva, and today we are here to premiere episode 4 of Kingdom Conversation. And you know what time it is? It's a Friday, and you know Fridays are for our podcast. And today's episode is episode 4, titled Finding Balance in Ministry and in Workplace. And of course, today I'm not alone. As always, we are honored today with our honorable guest today, who's going to be with us as the evening unfolds to give us insight and guidance onto this topic. My pastor, Reverend Doctor, welcome to Kingdom Conversation. How are you?
No, thank you for the warm welcome,
Mm.
and I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. As you know, that Kingdom Conversation is a platform that aims to host discussions, conversations, question and answers, one-on-one sessions about Christian matters, issues, and challenges that men also face on a day-to-day. And we aim to do this on a more relaxed setting where we have our guests comfortable, making sure that it's a one-on-one that they can be comfortable to share their testimonies, question and answer, and all of that. And today you are looking forward to a session with our guest here on unpacking issues related to ministry and workplace, how to find a balance, how do you ensure that the efforts are always reciprocating with each other. And feel free to tune in your comments and feel free to tune in your question as we go. And just before we proceed, as I've mentioned, that this takes a more like sitting, and this is not a teaching. And let us go to a part that I think I like about our podcast, a part where our guests get to introduce themselves, who they are, where they come from, what do they do, if they are comfortable with it, their acts of ministry and serving, all of that. I think this is your time to tell our audience who you are.
No, thank you once again. Well, as you already indicated, I am a reverend, I am a doctor, and that is an academic one. So I don't operate on anybody. So it's a doctorate in theology, philosophy in theology. So I am a pastor by call. I am an academic by profession, an active one, and my area of specialization is practical theology. That's where I excel. That's where I do lecturing in terms of the practical aspects of ministry, your homiletics, your preaching, your counseling, leadership, and the like. I also do research, write articles, have publications. I'm also an entrepreneur
Mm.
in the sense that business is part of the family side of things. So automatically, I'm also drawn to that. So I do entrepreneurship. I am a father
Mm.
and I'm a husband,
Mm.
a husband to a very beautiful wife and three children, two sons and a daughter. And in a nutshell, I think for an introduction, that would suffice.
It should, it should, it should.
Yeah.
And just to ask, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer being called Reverend Muthivhi, Dr. Muthivhi, Pastor Muthivhi?
Personally, there's not much of a difference.
Mm.
I know there are some nuances for certain people. It might have different significance.
Mm.
For example, for some people, reverend is an actual title and position within their church.
Mm.
For some, they apply it generally to mean a man of God, a pastor.
Yeah.
So I don't mind pastor. That's what I've been called the most.
Mm.
So reverend is more. It's more an official, professional designation more than anything. So pastor is fine. Reverend is fine.
Mm.
Um, as long as you get to to me. So even if
Yeah.
doctor, whichever one is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we are having episode 4 with Pastor Muthivhi to give us an insight about ministry and workplace, because we hear that he's an entrepreneur, he's a father, he's a reverend, he's also into teaching, he also has a PhD. So as someone in his space and someone who's juggling some of this in his life, it's someone who is quite suitable for this episode today to give us insight on how do you manage all of this and what happens when when you're struggling to balance and all of that. So that is what you're going to be looking forward to today. So with that part being done, we can therefore commence with the main part of today's podcast, because I think it's quite a lengthy one, because the balance is something that needs to be put on emphasis.
Yeah.
So just to start us off, how do you think and what do you think how do you think it is important for for men today to work and have careers and professions onto today's lives?
For men, there's a lot of expectation
Mm,
in terms of provision, in terms of different roles they play, as much as the scales are tipping or into different aspects, especially with women coming up.
mm,
But for men, it's almost imperative for them to be active, to be doing certain things,
mm,
to be in the forefront.
mm,
So it then becomes challenging in terms of how then do you facilitate all these things? How do you navigate them? How do you balance them?
mm,
Because you are seen as a leader.
mm.
And as a leader, obviously, you have to be in the forefront,
Yes.
active, always on your top game
Mm,
in terms of everything. So in
mm,
ministry, as a pastor, people are coming to you
mm,
to receive whatever you have on offer,
mm,
whether it's counseling, whether it's leadership, whether it's pastoral care.
mm.
So these are important things, and you really need to balance,
Yeah.
because you, in all honesty, you won't always be on your A game.
Mm,
So you find that you really have to be sensitive to how you navigate everything in terms of time management
yeah.
and in terms of organizing yourself.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm.
so it's very important.
It is very important. And the importance of, can you also put an emphasis on the importance of having to put on the dedication and go to actually do the work, do the work in your career, do the work in your profession, and something like that?
That's the thing. Um, One thing I also didn't mention that I also do radio.
Mm,
So if I'm going on radio, I have to be at my best.
mm.
Nobody might think, oh, okay, he's had a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has to deal with school fees and
Yeah.
kids' homework. No,
Yeah.
they're expecting a presenter on radio
On radio.
who will entertain them, who will get them um, satisfied with what they're listening to.
Mm,
So it means that for each and every aspect,
mm,
then I have to make sure that I'm able to cater and accommodate people. So it
mm,
means a lot of commitment
mm,
and dedication in that respect, because uh, you cannot compromise.
mm,
Especially for me personally, I'm someone who wants to do things excellently, so
mm.
I strive to make sure that if you are sitting down with the pastor, you are with the
That's
pastor
yes.
and nothing comes in. If we are
Mm,
doing academia, then we are doing academia at that level, in that way.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. And for someone who might be listening today and thinking that as men that the Lord will always provide the things that we need, is Jehovah Jireh the one who provides, and they might be listening and they might think that maybe work is not that important. But what does Scripture say about the importance of having to go to work and have careers and professions?
When you're mentioning something like this, you are reminding me of the way the late Dr. Monroe,
Mm,
Miles Monroe, approaches this concept.
mm,
And he speaks of two things: a work, and job,
mm,
which
yes,
are two
two
different
different
things,
things. Yeah.
you know. So, in terms of job, obviously, financially, it
Mm,
can also be helpful, and it's even better if it's something that it's part of your calling
mm,
and something that you enjoy.
mm,
So, when it comes to work, I feel that we each have a purpose and there's a work that we have to fulfill. So the moment you realize that work, which might not always be a job,
yeah.
kind of thing,
Mm,
so you equally have to be dedicated and to
yeah.
make sure that you do achieve what needs to be achieved. So it's very important that you're able to as a leader, be able to portray the roles in an excellent way when it comes to people.
mm,
Just because you're a pastor does not necessarily mean you cannot have a job,
mm,
unless by instruction and also by the level of work that you have to do in the ministry,
mm,
then you are then able to not have a job.
mm,
All right. But if that's an avenue that you are willing to do likewise with ministry, that's also important, because at the end of the day, you have to provide as
mm,
a father, as a husband, to your wife, to
true.
your children, to your relatives, to your
Mm,
family. It's a very broad spectrum
mm,
of people, especially as Africans, where we are communal,
mm,
and people, weddings and all these things, all these activities that are always happening
mm,
that need our attention and resources. So having a job will definitely be helpful.
mm,
And in terms of ministry, we each have ministry catered for according to our characters,
mm,
and the level of ministry that you're doing will also determine the amount of work you have to put in, dedication, commitment. If
true.
it requires a job, then it does. If it doesn't, then you can work through however God will have graced you to continue in that
Mm,
respect.
mm, mm. And I think this kind of talk we once had it at Mighty Men, just like Brothers thing, where we were also looking at how and why is it so important that we have to go out and do the work, because we also what we also meditated on that session was that Adam was put onto the Garden of Eden to take care of the garden. That from the creation, men were created to be able to take care of something and be able to work and do the actual work. So, and for us was like an encouraging word that we need to be able to stand up and go and actually do the work. And some of the time you find that things exist as either black and white. Things sometimes cannot mix. But can you speak about how ministry and work can they complement each other sometimes? And they happen at the same time for you, for example, in your life?
No, definitely, with reference to what you alluded to in the Garden of Eden,
Mm,
before anything else, even before marriage,
mm,
God gave men work.
yeah,
So it's almost natural for us to work.
yeah,
And that work might also entail a job,
mm,
right?
mm,
Sometimes we are given a picture that if you do ministry
mm,
and you're also in the marketplace,
mm,
then it's like you're not totally committed,
yeah.
and it's like you're not as faithful to the call as you
As
should
you should
be,
be, yeah,
and also as if you're not trusting in God and having faith in the provision of God,
yeah,
whereas that might also be how God wants it. So
mm,
personally, I have always been somebody who has done entrepreneurship,
mm,
worked on myself, worked for myself,
mm,
and then did ministry. So those two things were able to complement in terms of resources, in terms of reach, how
mm,
far you can go. And that all, of course, is with addition to the doors that God is able to open.
mm, mm,
So by the time I went into an actual profession, it's with that background.
mm.
So it was not work first
Work,
going
yeah,
into
ministry,
ministry, it was
mm,
ministry going that way. And for me, it complemented because
mm,
I was doing things that I had already done.
yeah,
So it's not entirely a job for me per se. It's just part of the work that God has placed inside of me, and for me to do. Because if I'm doing theology and it's the stream that I have chosen
mm,
and it's empowered academically, then for me it works
mm,
very well. It's not like I'm totally changing in academia to this
yeah,
person and then I become this person
different
in
other things,
ministry.
yeah,
It's just a continuation of
mm,
what I'm already doing. So whether I'm doing at conferences,
mm,
locally, internationally, it's just continuation of what I'm doing.
mm,
It's just a different aspect
mm,
of what God has already placed. So, as a man, for me, takes sacrifice and a lot of work to do that,
Yeah.
but it's something that's not me striving.
Mm.
It's not strife for me.
Mm.
For me, it's just part of what God has already called me to do.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So when we look into maybe some of the work that you do, which maybe might not like related to ministry, for example, entrepreneurship and maybe radio, for example, what efforts do you put into like the efforts that maybe you put into that work that people might not see before you? What kind of efforts maybe do you put into there?
It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
Let's start with radio because that's the most recent thing,
Mm.
because I'm growing into it.
Mm.
Yes, it looks like it's just a person speaking behind the mic. It's a bit
Yeah.
like preaching. And no way is it like that. So
Yeah.
it takes a whole lot of work. You have to prepare your scripts, you have
Mm.
to write things down now and prepare the whole show for 3 hours. You have to organize your guests, you have to be able to speak with people, you
Mm.
have to be able to get people's comments and
Mm.
ideas.
Mm.
You really have to get people channeled to your show. So for that, it's something that I'm growing. It takes a lot of work,
Yeah.
because you might find you have to prepare a sermon
Mm.
one side, you have to prepare a script
Sure.
one side, you have to be organizing these people, some
Yeah.
cancel, you have to reorganize,
Sure.
and then all these things. And
Mm.
then with entrepreneurship,
Mm.
fortunately, my exploits in that aspect, or what I do in that aspect, I had I have at least reached a level where I'm no longer working in the business,
Mm.
but I'm working on the business.
Mm.
And that's why I deliberately chose the word entrepreneurship instead of business
Business.
person,
Yeah.
because I work at an executive level,
Mm.
making decisions, delegating.
Mm.
Sometimes it does need you to come in
Yeah.
directly and
Mm.
actually
Be hands on.
do some hands-on work, as you are saying.
Mm.
So it takes a lot of sleepless nights,
Sure.
takes a lot of attention. It does take some time, even from family time.
Mm.
But at the end of the day, you really need to make sure that everything is catered for.
Mm.
I wouldn't want my family to miss me too much. So I do my level best to make sure that I'm there. So fortunately for me, again, with my wife, we are not too far
Yeah.
from all these areas. So if
Mm.
we're talking about academia, we also do the same stuff
Mm.
academically. Also business, we've also got businesses that we're
Mm.
working on together. So we delegate, we make sure that people make sure that things run smooth and accordingly.
Yeah, it shows that indeed you put a lot of efforts and it requires like a lot of dedication. And before when we see Pastor Muthivhi, the Reverend Muthivhi, what then efforts do you also put in ministry?
It's everything, you know. What you see is what you get. It's a whole package.
Mm.
So you, number one, have to study. The word
Yeah.
of God says, study to show thyself approved, a workman that need not be ashamed, but rightly
Mm.
dividing the word of truth. That means prayer time. That means studying the word of God, not just reading it,
Really.
really studying it and making sure that what you are presenting is of quality
Mm.
and it is in alignment with what the Holy Spirit needs in terms of leadership as a man, in terms of your own integrity as a human being, and also in terms as of somebody, working towards making it to heaven.
Mm.
So there's a lot of work that goes into that,
Yeah.
really studying and making sure that you understand. So even when I'm talking about studying, it's not merely limited to biblical literature,
Yeah.
but studying different things. So if it's radio, I'm listening to how do others do it,
Okay.
what they should not do. I study those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
So I try make myself a walking university to myself.
Yeah, yeah.
So the whole environment is a university to me. So listening to radio, it's not for the sake of listening to radio. I'm learning, I'm getting things. If it's ministry, so it fits into everything in terms of preaching, how to get to be relevant, all right? Although I'm using that word loosely, right? To be relevant to every situation, because I don't only minister to adults, I don't only minister to young people.
Yeah.
I should be able to minister to everybody. And for me, it's not about me trying to accommodate for the sake of accommodating, but it's about making the word of God significant to everybody in a way that they are able to apply it in their own lives and understand how it factors them there. So by the time you see Dr. Muthivhi, there's a lot that has happened.
Yeah.
I have to be there for my wife. She has to feel my presence. She has to know that her husband is there. We have to organize things, how to take care of the kids, how to take care of the family, how to deal with whatever projects we might have. I have to do that. When it comes to ministry, if there are invitations, preparing for that. Um, Again, I also do lecture at the Bible College.
More and more just keep on coming, just
Yeah.
remember.
So I also have to balance those things and
Yeah.
also make sure that I help. But with everything that I do, I try make sure it's not at the expense of something, but it fits within its own area,
Yeah.
and it does not interfere with
With
the
the
other.
others.
So during the week, if I'm doing academia, I'm doing academia, right, from morning until knock off. In the evening, I've still got more hours.
Yeah.
I've still got more time with my family. I'll still have to finish work. I do that. If I still have to read, I'll do that. Radio is in the weekend.
Yeah.
Right? It's on Sunday before church. So it's from church until,
That makes sense.
yeah. So sometimes it does overlap. You find that there's so many uh, speaking and preaching engagements on a Saturday, right? And then I have to squeeze in time to make the script for radio.
For Sunday.
So you might find I sleep at 1 and have to wake up at 4
Yeah.
to get ready for radio, then
Yeah.
do radio. From radio, direct from there, I'm going into church service.
Yeah.
Sometimes preaching, sometimes organizing certain things. After that service, some counseling sessions. After that, then you might have meetings or other stuff that I feel I need to sort out, business things and so on. So technology sometimes lessens the burden of certain things. It's not like you have to go stand in a line. During lunch you can just quickly pay for that and pay for that and continue with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as our listeners can get to see today that we are with someone here who is has a lot of things in their life. I guess they're a very busy person. So our guest here, Pastor Muthivhi, so you'll be with us here as this podcast unfolds. But we also just want to get to the balance part of ministry and workplace. So what happens when maybe sometimes that you find that you're putting a little bit more effort on ministry and less on other things? And what happens maybe when that there's that imbalance in your life? It can be from your side or it can be from external things.
I think it also depends on one's concept on the word balance. All right. Because for me, it also speaks about priority,
Yeah, it does.
right? So it depends on what really needs me personally, what needs a certain aspect of me, and then I take it from there. So we won't always have a sequential life where everything is packed neatly.
Yeah.
This must come after this,
This.
and then you do this and you do this. So I see three-dimensionally in terms of a puzzle. There's a piece for each and everything. Sometimes you need to start in the corner. Sometimes you find pieces that make sure that things fit in the middle,
Yeah.
and then you work your way from there.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of sacrifice. So
Mm.
time becomes an asset. Your
Yeah.
your time really becomes very, very valuable to you and
Mm.
very important. So from that aspect, that's where now you have to work on seeing how you balance things. And
Mm.
if you want to do things excellently and you do want to progress possibly even faster,
Mm.
then it means the hours you sleep now become just a bit shorter,
Shorter.
and that you also use your time in a more valuable way,
Mm.
so it can't just be an issue of watching social media for the sake of laughs. No,
Mm.
it has to be factored into, see, is this valuable or is
Yeah.
this a distraction?
Mm.
Then you will most likely find that you've got so much time and there's
Mm.
so many things that you can really do and achieve.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Think something that you just mentioned now is that there are some things maybe like in our lives that they are agent. Some of them are not agent. That you may find that something is agent but it's not important. It can
Mm-hmm.
be agent but it's not important. Some of it needs your attention. Some of it doesn't need. Some of it needs your presence, and it
Mm.
doesn't. It all goes back to priorities that you as you mentioned. And when you did mention that you put this amount of work into your into the things of into the ministry and into your work, but what how do you know when things are not at when the puzzles are not puzzling together? Like maybe when you think that when you put efforts there and efforts there and things are just not working out together, how do you know in yourself that you are not balancing things well?
I think I can answer that in threefold.
Mm.
Um, Someone once indicated, and I learned this and I took it,
Mm.
that it's not so much that we don't have the resources or the capability,
Mm.
is that we're not organized,
Yeah.
right? So you need to organize. To organize means while you are busy putting your things in place, your pieces of the puzzle,
Mm.
positioning them in different aspects, you then have checks to
Yeah.
say, if I have organized this to happen in this particular time, in this particular way, and it doesn't,
Mm.
then I know.
Mm.
So it's not something that just happens haphazard. Then all this
Yeah.
work is just coming, and then
Yeah.
I'm playing around and trying to think. So organization is
Yeah.
very important.
Mm.
So number two, again, prioritizing,
Mm.
right? Check your priorities.
Mm.
What is the most important thing? There's just some things that are not as important as you might think
Mm.
and don't directly need you,
Yeah.
right? So learn to delegate.
Mm.
Yeah, learn to delegate, learn to trust others to give these people, right? And then number three, I can talk to accountability.
Mm.
Number one, issue of mistakes, right? If you want to progress, again, I heard this from someone, if you want to progress, make sure that you make more mistakes.
Mm.
So they're the best teachers.
Yeah.
It shows you, it tells you that you're progressing. So you definitely have to make those mistakes. They might be painful,
Yeah.
demoralizing at that moment, but if you choose to pick yourself up, you'll most likely even learn better on how to do certain things. So
Mm.
that's where accountability comes in, to say,
Mm.
no, let me account for this. Did I do this right? Did I do
Mm.
this? So it needs checks, it needs you to have people around you who can also be your mirror,
Mm.
people you can trust and say, hey, did I do that correctly?
Yeah.
Did I say the right things?
Mm.
Am I vibrant enough?
Mm.
How was it for you?
Mm.
So even if you are a preacher,
Mm.
record yourself. listen to yourself and say, is this what other people are hearing, and am I satisfied with what they are hearing?
Hearing.
Right.
Mm.
So the more you organize yourself, the more you prioritize, and the more you take accountability,
Ability.
then you are able to see what's right, what's not going on,
Mm.
what's happening. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Sometimes, even if it's not a priority, but certain things will need more work,
Yeah.
allow it. It's a part of the process.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Sure. I think even today, people should just like have their notepads and like write down, all the small steps that we are leading today because it's
Yeah.
such an insightful statements. So that now that you've mentioned that you have checks in your life to go, to make sure that things are going well, it takes like organization, it takes one to be accountable. So do you remember any instance in your life maybe the imbalance was quite persistent that you realize that there's an in your life that you just like neglected and it just become persistent?
No, there definitely was. The moment you go on this PhD
Mm,
journey,
mm,
especially when you are a lecturer,
mm,
it demands so much.
mm,
And
sure.
there are times you might feel that you even want to quit,
Mm,
because the fact that now you've got this big project that you're dealing with does not necessarily mean that everything else has stopped.
yeah.
Right. So if your kids want attention and you're busy on the laptop and they're coming, hey, daddy this and daddy that, hey, let's play this game, and you're thinking, hey, I've got 10 pages missing here and I've only got a paragraph.
Mm.
Yeah, so I can't be harsh and say, go away, daddy's busy or whatever.
Yeah.
I need to give them time, because personally, I told myself that family is priority. I'm not going to compromise on that,
Mm,
even
mm,
for a piece of paper,
mm,
right? And I'm saying that very, very loosely. So the PhD journey really took a lot out of me,
mm,
because now you've got work, and sometimes it gets a lot, especially with the way higher education is now. They expect you to do a lot of stuff. They expect you to publish book chapters, um, conference proceedings, to
mm,
articles. They expect you to do all those things. They expect you to teach. You have to teach, prepare for the actual class. You
sure.
have to mark, you have to have time to deal with students. That's just academia.
Mm,
And also at work, I mean, I'm the sectional coordinator of theology. So I've also got administrative responsibilities
mm,
for the department, for the faculty, that I'm also working on in addition just to that.
mm,
So there were times where I felt, yeah, now this is too much.
mm,
So you then have to reach a crossroads to say what's working, what's not working,
yeah.
what's important, what can I fix,
Mm,
is this really worth it,
mm,
or uh, I can do without, right?
mm,
Can I send someone for this? And then you begin to prioritize. So I think that's one thing that helped me. But you do definitely get to a level where you're like, now this is just too much, and you're burning out,
mm,
because now you're at full cylinders at everything.
sure.
You could be dealing with this difficult chapter in the PhD, and then you have to deal with a family that has just lost someone, and
Mm,
you have to be there with them, and you've got deadlines for certain things, and there are projects at home and so on. So it does really sometimes cost
yeah.
and requires sacrifice, but it all depends on, as a man, where you are positioned, whether it's
Mm,
for you or it's not for
it's
you,
not for you.
and how far you want to go. So
Mm,
the further you want to go, the more
you have to push.
you really have to push.
Mm, mm. So you talk here about also the importance of like stepping back to also see what's before you, because in the crossroads, as you mentioned, that there will be a lot of things happening, and then you might sometimes get burnt out. But can you also emphasize on the importance of taking a step back to try and see things from a different alternatives when things are getting when I can say things are getting tough.
Leadership wise, I was inspired by something that Dr. Miles Monroe once said.
Mm,
He said you should have a day
mm,
where you just focus on thinking only.
mm,
All right. So I used to have a lot of those days.
mm,
Make sure that I have a day in a week
mm,
where I'm just thinking. I'm not doing anything. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not calling. I'm just thinking,
yeah,
and it did wonders for me.
mm,
I was because I would be thinking about myself. Who is this? What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to achieve? Just by thinking those things, then you start having ideas, and God can also come in. So whenever I start feeling stressed out and this is like too much,
mm,
because you have to get to a point where you learn to rest,
yeah.
right? Nobody is going to award it to you or give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that you have to really do for yourself
Yeah.
and say, I'm not available,
Mm,
all right? During these PhD years, there were invites that I just did not go because I was focusing on this. Because at the end of the day, it's what God wants me to do,
mm,
right? And it's also an opportunity for me to give an opportunity to others
yeah.
to also do that.
Mm,
So, because I'm someone who has mentorship within their heart,
mm,
it's also a way of mentoring others to give them
mm,
that opportunity. So, takes commitment, dedication, and a lot of sacrifice.
yeah.
I would not say it's easy to be me, and I appreciate my family. I
Yeah.
appreciate my wife
Mm,
because it's not easy. I was thinking the other day that hey, sometimes when people are talking about dating and all this, and they're trying to find out the best way to navigate it, and I always think, Corey, it's more defensive in trying to say, let's check out for cheating and all these things. But now, when you've got somebody who's more capacitated
mm,
with a greater vision to do more things, it's more difficult than dealing with with such issues, because
yeah.
now you're dealing with somebody who has a global vision. You're dealing
Mm,
somebody who's working internationally. You're dealing with somebody who is speaking at different levels. You're speaking with somebody who's having to organize, arrange, and position for themselves, to be able to meet with an ambassador and
mm,
sit down. You see, it's a different story altogether
it
than
is.
checking somebody's phone whether they're cheating or not.
Sure, sure. You did talk about also sacrifices. I think for me that's something that is quite good to explore. You mentioned that a lot of things will need sacrifices, but what are the pitfalls that people don't see in terms of those sacrifices? You know, the emotions, the setbacks, the things that happen behind that people do not see, those sacrifices.
Two things. Um, the process of emotional intelligence,
Mm,
because it takes a lot of sacrifice.
yeah,
It takes a lot of money.
yeah.
Yeah, no jokes about it. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of money. All right. So, fortunately, with some of those things, you might get help. So,
Mm,
when I started my educational journey, it meant sacrifice of certain things
mm,
so that money can go where it will benefit me later.
mm,
So whether it was the degree, the honors, the masters, those were largely funded by myself. PhD, fortunately, I was able to get some very, very good scholarships for that. So it does cost you
yeah,
financially, literally. Number two, sacrifice of time.
yeah.
Yeah, sacrifice of time. There are times where you would want to be sleeping, and that does just not happen because you're supposed to be working.
Working.
So that's a lot of sacrifice. So for somebody who's not ready for it, who's not prepared for it, it's a great obstacle, it's a pitfall
Mm,
for them, because it takes a lot of sacrifice. It takes a lot of sacrifice in terms of the people you associate with.
Mm.
You won't have certain times with certain people
People, yeah.
because it does not allow you. You are busy at work, you are busy
Mm.
making sure that things are happening. So if you're doing something like a PhD or your postgraduate education, uh, you might find that some people see you otherwise
Mm.
because you won't be dedicating so much things to them because you
Yeah.
need to prioritize
Yes.
and
Important
finish
things.
what you need
Mm.
to finish.
Mm.
And they might find or the things that you are talking about are not what you usually talk
Talk about,
about.
yeah.
You are dealing with methodologies and literature reviews
Yeah.
and all of those things. So there are definitely those challenges.
Mm.
Some things you just even totally forget,
Mm.
you know. So that's why it's important to take that back seat.
That makes it. Mm.
So at one point, I had a PA to make sure that, hey, these
All right.
things now I need to be managed myself. The
Yeah.
invites, the different deadlines, the
Mm.
different projects, so that it does not interfere with everything.
With
So
everything.
now you are at a level where you say, let me get somebody, let me pay them
Mm.
to do whatever. It's just currently I still do need one. So I need to get the right person who will be able to work
Mm.
at my pace.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we we
We
continue.
continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with all these things that you do in your life, if for example you were to like to reset and to just like start afresh today, and we give you ministry, give you radio, we give you everything, what would you like to do differently, or what would you like to do better in, now that you have explored all of these things together at once, now that we give you a chance to say, okay, let's reset, what do you want to do differently?
I don't think there's much I
Mm,
would want to do differently because I feel all these things are working together
for
for
the
good
good, yeah.
because they each have a role to play. I took it from a biblical perspective from Jesus, who did not waste anything. You
Mm-mm,
know, even after having fed the 5,000 and having had a surplus,
mm,
it was not put to waste. And
mm-mm,
there was nothing that happened, and there's nothing that he did, and there's nothing that he said that was just for the sake of doing it. Each and everything had a purpose. So I think everything contributed to where I am now.
yeah.
So if there was one thing I was to do based on the reset, I think I would have fought more for my own confidence
Mm,
and not delayed in certain areas.
mm,
And I would have also put more effort in certain things because I now know the value
yeah.
in the future
Yeah.
that they are.
Mm,
So those might be some of the things that I would really
mm,
work on.
mm,
Yes, there are some failures, but it's part of the process.
part of the process
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah. So maybe so our listeners might be, you might find that someone we might be listening to them, they might be inspired. Maybe you can give them an advice or something, that if it's someone who is starting ministry, and they're also, maybe they're studying work, but they're studying some things like this together. They're studying them together and starting to juggle both of them. And what advice maybe would you give to them?
I think the advice I'd give them would be put your ducks in a row,
Mm,
you know, set up what you are trying to put up, right? It won't happen all at once,
yeah.
right? But put in your effort to organize your things and make sure that everything is in place. What do I mean by that? You're
Mm,
beginning to work. Organize yourself. What is your plan? What is your vision? Are you going to be working professionally, wire? Are you going to then go on your own?
Mm.
All right, set it up. All
Mm.
right, organize the finances, organize how much you're gonna need to do everything. Marriage, how you gonna do marriage, how are you gonna do profession, how you gonna do entrepreneurship, how you gonna do
Mm.
ministry. Set it up. So it really needs you to know yourself
Mm.
and understand who you are.
Mm.
So be kind to yourself. You
Mm.
will make mistakes, you will fail, you will be embarrassed, you will be humiliated,
Mm.
right? But let it work for you and it must benefit you. You must profit from all those struggles and challenges while putting your things in in order.
Mm.
In terms of marriage, what is the ultimate goal? What is the vision?
Mm.
Right? What are you going to do with this partner of yours, with this person? Is it just about having kids and making sure they go to varsity and
Mm.
that's it? What is it? Is it about building an empire?
Mm.
What what is it?
What is it?
So the moment you identify your vision,
Mm.
it then helps you put your things in place. You now
Mm.
know what should I study.
Mm.
What do I need to learn? Where do I need capacity? What type of people
Mm.
I need to associate with? It begins to channel you. So vision
Mm.
and purpose and calling is very, very
It's very
important,
important.
especially as a man.
Mm. Yeah, you talk a lot of, so you emphasize a lot about planning and also making sure that you know what you need, where and how, and all of that, so that you have it all out, so that you don't just just do things just because you.
There's no other way. You can't just move and operate by the modus operandi or the status quo,
Mm.
because it's not going to happen by accident,
Mm.
right? I if I want to be muscular, I need a plan. I need to be organized. I need to be disciplined.
Mm.
That's another word that's key.
Mm.
Disciplined and committed
Mm.
to that, having a vision, or this is what I want to achieve with this. So for me, that's why it's important. All right, it's good to hang around. It's too good to be social, but what benefit?
What benefits you?
At what expense?
Mm.
It must be working always towards your vision.
Vision. Mm. As we also draw today's episode to a conclusion, maybe to someone who is also maybe they're in the crossroads, someone who they feel like this is a lot, feel like they took more than they bit more than they can chew. What also can you say? I think you have touched on a bit of emotional intelligence and self care. Maybe you can also elaborate onto that.
I think for that person, it's also the way I would do it. See how far I can go.
Mm.
All right, push it to the limit.
Mm.
Right, push it to the limit until I break through and really know where I'm at and
Mm.
what's happening. I know it sounds like no, you should be relaxing, you should be doing this. No, but really push it and see how far you go. The only way we build muscle is by stretching them.
Yeah.
And the irony about it is that it seems painful,
Mm.
but that pain is what you need to stretch you to even make you stronger for that. So even when you are there, because the moment you stop and you get tired, most likely everything will also just,
Yeah.
because it's
Mm.
done out of desperation.
Mm.
But now it's either you push or you say, okay, let me take a break, let me assess what's happening, but still you need
You
to
should
push.
push. Mm. Mm. But I mean, people can get caught up into thinking that they feel like it's a lot. They feel, but some of the time you just need to realize that it's while you're still feeling that pain, while you're still feeling that exhaustion, you just need to push through that because you're gonna bet something which is beautiful from there.
Two things: the pain you are feeling, it's weakness going out.
Mm.
That's number one.
Mm.
Number two, if it was easy,
No.
everybody would be doing it,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
But if you put in just a bit more effort and time into it, you will have gone so much further than what other people who are not doing it
Mm.
are. It's like somebody saying, I can't study, my brain doesn't work now, whatever. I'm too old. Yeah, you're just gonna get older without anything. You might as well get older with that qualification.
Sure.
At least the age and the time used up produce something.
Something.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. I still feel like we can go further and further and further into this now. It's just that unfortunately that our time is also running out. But what are the take home message or like final remarks to our listeners based on this topic of finding balance in ministry and workplace?
For me, do excellent.
Mm.
Yeah, do excellent. Think about that CEO where there are companies with 500, 1,000, 10,000 outlets, businesses out there being run by one person.
Mm.
There must be something leadership wise in terms of excellence that person is doing.
Mm.
And I want to go after that. I want to learn that. So I think that's how we must approach things to do excellence, especially at that level where things have just scaled to another level. And that's what we need as Africans. Sometimes what we do is limited,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And we find ourselves constricted only to what is
Before
just,
us, yeah.
near
Mm.
for us, whereas what we have is global. So do excellence and see how you can go and how
Mm.
far you can reach,
Mm.
so that we can really appreciate what you've got on offer. I mean, um, I was in the US and I saw uh, what's this coffee, Starbucks,
Mm.
their first shop. I was there and I'm thinking, wow, it started here and now it's global. So it means somebody worked for excellence to say what systems, what resources, what connections, how to
Mm.
plan this, how to organize. So even with this podcast, you apply excellence and see how far, then you'll be talking about different things going all over. So that's the mentality I'm striving towards, and I feel somebody if they are to go for it, then most likely will go further
We'll
than.
go further than we think, yeah.
Yeah.
As we bring today's episode into summation, this was episode 4 of Kingdom Conversation titled Finding Balance in Ministry and Workplace. And we are honored today to have our pastor, Pastor Mtv, who gave us insights into this. And I'd like to say just to say thank you to my Reverend Pastor Mtv. Before everybody else, thank you for putting for availing yourself to this and to this episode to give us such insight, because I don't think it's easy to just go find someone who's busy and all of this. You just find some time to be at Kingdom Conversations. But we say thank you and we value your time for this.
No, much appreciated. Thank you.
And also thank you to our online viewers, and thank you to our audience here who always tune in all the time. So thank you. And also feel free to pop in your questions, feel free to pop in your comments, and also pop in the question that the topic that you would like us to have one day at Kingdom Conversation, and maybe a possible guest that you would like us to feature into this podcast. But besides that, I also just want to send an announcement again that tomorrow is our first annual Mighty Men Gathering celebration, and we've been going all out, and you saw the invites, you saw the videos. So feel free to tune in and we'll be glad to host you there. I think that is all for today. Stay blessed till we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.